maybe you've asked the question, why does God not answer my prayer? Well, maybe he did answer it and you just don't like the answer. God answers prayer in three ways: yes, no, and wait. We love yes. We do not like no, and wait is hard. Listen to this. Sometimes God says no. Sometimes God says slow. And sometimes God says grow. Let me illustrate. Sometimes God says no. You know, the Apostle Paul had a lot of calamity in his life. He was beaten with rods. He was shipwrecked. He was stoned, not that kind of stoned. And so this guy had a lot of injuries. And he writes in the book of 1 Corinthians, I asked the Lord to heal me of this thorn in the flesh. Most commentators believe it was some kind of a physical problem. And the Lord effectively said no when he said to Paul, my grace is sufficient for you. Sometimes God says slow, because we get impatient with the Lord and we want him to do it now. Moses is a perfect example of this. Moses was a Jewish man who was adopted into the house of Pharaoh, being groomed to potentially become the next Pharaoh, as a matter of fact. And he saw how the Egyptians were mistreating the Jews. And God wanted him to deliver those people, but he got a little ahead of schedule. Took matters into his own hands, saw an Egyptian taskmaster beating a Jewish man, and killed the guy, and then had to go into exile for 40 years. So he had the right idea. He just didn't wait on God's timing. Wait on God's timing. A word to you single people out there. You want to get married one day? Wait for the right person to come along. Be patient. The Bible says love is patient. Look for a godly person, and never get romantically involved with a non-believer, for the Bible says don't be unequally yoked together with non-believers. Sometimes God says no. Sometimes God says slow. Sometimes God says go. Boom, he just answers your prayer. So quickly, it kind of blows your mind. In the book of Acts chapter 12, there's a story of Simon Peter being put in prison, and the Bible says constant prayer was offered to God for him by the church, and God answered their prayer. Peter was released and was knocking at the door of the house that they were in, most likely praying for him, and they didn't believe it was him. They were shocked that God answered their prayer. Maybe God's telling you to go right now. Maybe he's telling you to slow down, or maybe he's telling you no. Leave it in God's hands and trust him. Never be afraid to commit an unknown future to a known God.